Thank you all for being here tonight. You've just seen a short excerpt from Catherine Stevenson's photo documentary, Nelson Ball and Barbara Crusoe Home Project. And you can find the entire half-hour documentary on YouTube. Just look for Nelson Ball and Barbara Crusoe Home Project. Before we proceed tonight, we'd like to respectfully acknowledge that the Nelson Ball Prize is administered from land located on the Treaty 20 Michi-Sagig territory and in the traditional territory of the Michi-Sagig and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations, which include Curve Lake, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Rama, Beausoleil, and Georgina Island First Nations. And we further acknowledge that the Williams Treaties First Nations are the stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, and they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure the health and integrity of these lands and waters for generations to come. My name's Stuart Ross. We're here this evening to award a prize in the name of Nelson Ball, a dear friend to many of us and one of Canada's most important and quietly influential poets. And I'm joined this evening by my co-host, Catherine Stevenson, a close friend of Nelson's. Catherine is a juggler of roles, mom to 2 boys, a dog, and 2 birds. She's also been a part-time special education teacher for over 2 decades. Midway through that time, she also became a curator at a historic house museum not far from Paris, Ontario, where Nelson lived. While sitting out on the grounds of the museum on that rural road one afternoon, she met Nelson. He had been walking, in his words, for exercise and distraction. He described their meeting as a happy coincidence. Catherine says that their friendship enriched her life and infused it with a wonderful peacefulness. Nelson, I know, felt enriched by Catherine's friendship.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to see all of you tonight. And it makes it's a lovely thing to feel the immediacy of my friendship with Nelson again, because I've been feeling the loss of it for a couple of years now. And quite wonderful also to see the documentary, which has in which you can see the shoes that Nelson wore when he was going on those walks, among other things. So now I'm going to just tell you a little bit more about Nelson. Nelson was born in Clinton, Ontario in 1942. He briefly studied psychology at the University of Waterloo, where he co-edited the literary magazine, Volume 63, before launching Weed Flower Press in 1965. Through Weed Flower, he published about 40 mimeographed books of poetry, often featuring visual contributions by his artist wife, Barbara Crusoe, as well as the poetry magazines Weed and Hyphen. He issued early books by Carol Berger, Bill Bissett, George Bowering, Victor Coleman, David McFadden, B.P. Nicol, and others, as well as many of his own. Over the years, Nelson worked variously as a laborer, chauffeur, seasonal forest ranger, a record store clerk, and a janitor. He and Barbara moved to Toronto in 1967, where Nelson worked as a library assistant at the University of Toronto and then at a bookstore. In 1972, Nelson opened his bookstore, and the next year he suspended the publishing and soon his own writing to become a full-time seller of used and antiquarian Canadian literature. In 1985, he and Barbara moved to Paris, Ontario, and his words on that were in the documentary that you saw, where they occupied a 3-story former Domtar building, which you saw. This became their home, as well as Nelson's bookshop and Barbara's art studio. In the late 1980s, Nelson began writing again, and several full-length collections of his work have been published by various Canadian literary presses. In 1993, he again began self-publishing chapbooks and ephemera, this time under the imprint Rubblestone Press. After Barbara's death in 2009, Nelson continued to write, and 5 more full collections appeared, as well as his first book of poems for children. Nelson died on his own terms in hospital in Brantford, Ontario on August 16th, 2019. And there are many remembrances of him, either existing or in process. But the one that I want to mention was initiated by Pat Moore, a close friend of Nelson's, who supported him so much in his last years. She deserves most of the credit for this wonderful bench that you see. It is on one of the walking trails of Paris, and there are many wonderful walking trails. It overlooks the Nith River. And the plaque that you see on it, and you see the zoomed version of it, has one of Nelson's poems. And it was one dedicated to Barbara. And very appropriately, the bench is situated in front of trees that actually do intersect and make a squeaking sound. So it's just such a magical place to be. So if any of you want to go and visit it, we'll facilitate I have a map that will show you how to get there, and you can find it yourself and see it for yourself.
Great, thanks. Maybe that map could be posted on the Nelson Ball Poetry Fan Club page on Facebook.
Yeah, we can do that for sure.
People can look for it there. So
Mhm.
thanks so much, Catherine. And yeah, I'm so grateful that you made that photo documentary, that you documented that incredible space. It's just so amazing to see it every time, to see that entrance especially, and imagine Nelson standing along that hallway. Before I tell you all about the prize, which is the reason we're gathered here, I have a bit of Nelson and Barbara news I'd like to share. First, Cameron Anstey, who is a great person and a great poet and a great publisher in Ottawa, who's also a good friend of Nelson's. He has been working away on a gigantic volume of Nelson's collected poems. Nelson's poems were tiny, but there were a lot of them. We'll soon be knocking on publishers' doors to find a home for that project. In the meantime, I've put together a full collection of Barbara Crusoe's poems that I've assembled from her papers. She never had a full-length book during her lifetime. And I found a publisher for that book. I've also been working, and I believe I'm going to be able to assemble a volume of Nelson's last poems, his unpublished last poems, and they would be published along with Barbara's book as 2 separate volumes. And there's more. In the meantime, 2 poet translators, Charlotte Young and Eva Ribich, are working right now on translating a large selection of Nelson's poems into Swedish, a project that they've already placed with a publisher in Sweden. So let's get to the origins of this prize. In Nelson's last days, I went for a foresty kind of a walk in Dundas, Ontario, with bookseller James MacDonald, who's another close friend of Nelson's and a great supporter of Nelson's. And Nelson was a great supporter of James's. And we discussed how we could honor Nelson with a prize in his name. Should it go to the author of a book of minimalist poetry, as Nelson was this country's greatest minimalist poet? Or should it go to the author of a book of nature poems, as Nelson was one of the finest nature poets in Canada? But James proposed that the prize reward a publication that highlights poetry of observation, as this seemed to get to the essence of Nelson's own lifelong writing project. And that was the phrase that Nelson used, poetry of observation. So we decided to open the prize up to a publication of any size, a leaflet, a chapbook, a broadside, a full book by a Canadian poet. I told Nelson's dear friend, Susan Yates, what we were scheming. And during a visit in those last days with Nelson in the hospital, Susan told him about it, and she asked for his permission. And in his soft, raspy voice, nearly inaudible at that time, he said, yes. And then, after a period of quiet and their always were periods of quiet whenever you visited with Nelson. He said, "That's wonderful."
So this prize, the prize about which Nelson said that's wonderful, is made possible through the generosity of over a dozen donors from across the country. We're so grateful to all of them. And we wish to extend particular gratitude to Nelson's sisters, Liz Ball and Mary Neff, as well as to Trish and David Little, Ellie Nickel, Lance LaRoque, Jack David, Pat Moore, Don McLeod, Warren Dean Fulton, and several donors who have asked to remain anonymous, as well as Kate Belair.
This year's judges, James McDonald and Beverly Dario, looked at over 100 publications, from chapbooks to full-length collections. And in November, they produced a short list of 5 titles. In a moment, you're going to experience short readings in alphabetical order by the shortlisted poets. But just before we get to those clips, Catherine is going to tell you a bit about each of the shortlisted poets for the 2021 Nelson Ball Prize.
Patrick Friesen is a poet, playwright, songwriter, essayist, and translator living in Victoria, BC. He is the author of more than a dozen books, and his co-translation of Ulrika Gernes' frayed opus for strings and wind instruments was shortlisted for the 2016 Griffin Poetry Prize. Julie Jostin, who lives in Toronto, holds an MFA from Iowa Writers Program and a PhD from Cornell University. She is the author of 2 poetry collections. The first, Light, Light, was shortlisted for the Governor General's Award for Poetry and the Gerald Lampert Award. Zane Koss, the author of 4 poetry chapbooks. His poetry has appeared in journals in Canada and the US. A doctoral candidate at New York University, he's studying Canadian, American, and Mexican poetry of the 1960s and 1970s, and he currently lives in Brooklyn. Chantal Neveu is the author of 5 poetry books, and her interdisciplinary works involving music, stage, and video have been presented internationally. Her book, This Radiant Life, won the 2021 Governor General's Award for French to English translation. The book's translator, Erin Moray, has published over 40 books of poetry, essays, memoir, and translation. Her poetry has been shortlisted for or has won the Governor General's Award, the Pat Lowther Award, the A.M. Klein Prize, the Griffin Poetry Prize, and more. Both she and Chantal live in Montreal. And Matthew James Weigel is a Dene and Métis poet and artist pursuing an MA in English at the University of Alberta. His work has won the Cecile E. McTaggart Award, the Vallum Chapbook Award, and the B.P. Nicol Chapbook Award. Matthew lives in Edmonton.
And now you get to hear from each of those poets.
Thanks for dropping by. I'd like to acknowledge that where I'm sitting here is the unceded territory of the Songhees and Esquimalt people. I'm going to read 6 or 7 poems from a new and selected called Outlasting the Weather, brought out by Anvil Press. The cover is designed by Marika Friesen. It's a superb cover, my favorite of hers. She designs most of my books. And she works in Toronto. Okay, I'm going to begin with a poem called Im Spiegel. This comes from an arvo part song called Spiegel im Spiegel, which means mirror in mirror. Beautiful song. The poem has nothing to do with the song itself, just the title. It's a kind of interior anthropology. Naked from sleep, you bend toward the sink, cup your hands with cold water, splash your face. You raise your head and wake into the morning. But in the mirror is someone behind your eyes, beard dripping and eyes bluer than you've ever seen. You stand there in the flesh that is not you. You have not seen yourself since the last birth, and you don't wonder after the first shock. You only ask where you've been so long. One face you touch, and you reach for the other. You're standing in a room in the world when the door behind you opens. I used to have the habit, whenever I arrived in a city that I hadn't been to before, I would find a church, preferably a cathedral, something with some good architecture and acoustics. It had to be empty, and I just enjoyed sitting at the end of a pew, taking in the acoustics, the art, and the emptiness. And it was an emptiness that filled me, if that makes sense. The poem I'm going to read came out of a visit to Our Lady of Guadalupe in New Orleans. The reference to O'Keeffe is, of course, Georgia O'Keeffe, and a particular painting, probably several paintings of bones, the human frame. O'Keeffe bones. A place where you never heard thunder, not thunder, not the sound that reaches into you for a moment and leaves, leaving nothing behind to hold you, nothing to terrify, leaving nothing but the rubble of a fallen city. It's a place you can't return to. There's too much going on. The only church you love to enter is the empty one, sitting at the back, always near the door, and no one in sight. You listen for the sound that was left behind. Awake in the pew, rafters and hymns and stained glass, the stations of the cross around all that want. And you sully the emptiness with your body, the smell of worry, of world, the smell of your birth. Alive, you sit there in your memory, and memory before that, knowing everything always leaves. You sit there and don't belong to what you see or know. You belong to nothing but what you hear. And what you hear is what you heard or what you think you heard. Echo, fade, and Doppler effect. What you don't hear anymore is the word, any word. You don't hear solace, and there is no astonishment. What you hear is the wind in March, or perhaps in July, or that exhalation you think you hear at night. Human ruin, the serenity of the building fallen. What is there is the sun on O'Keeffe bones beside a white wall.
Hi, my name is Julie Jostin, and I'm reading a poem from my new book, Not. The poem is called Dear Friend. Thank you for listening. Dear friend, beside the library lions, the bed is an island, a page, a blue door opening onto the bird in your veins. Someone writes of a language that heals as much as it separates. Someone writes of gathering scattered elements and covering them with words to embolden existence. Someone writes of a language that restores equilibrium but doesn't absolve a debtor from debt. It's snowing. There's a dead boy whom I love now as my child. The locality of love alters. The bird in your heart holds its silence up to such distance. Invent a form of to love. Invent a local anguish. Population 1,213. From thence to thou, bird-shaped and blue, from thou to thee in the library air is, met and unmet, extending as electrons or accidents or architecture. Your poem floods the nervous system. Dear friend. Birdsong untongued becomes a nest. In the center this nest is thy mind's a nightingale, blue throat in a field of shadow. In the darkness beyond blue, other minds. To share the transport, oh, with whom but thee, a whom now, whithersoever in the minds of others. We've come to this pass. Water closes over, annihilate, the noun I move as. Nouns and verbs resemble thought, a movement marking its arrival with the warmth of disappearing. From the ragged edge of spring and the ragged edge of thought, a way of being, to praise thine, the mountain the garden borrows. In the folds of a violet, I work to earth my heart. A rose resembles a blossom. A blossoming treetop resembles a cloud, and the flight of a bird a violet resembles overtakes both. A falling leaf resembles a bee resembles a rhythm, flying, its arcing indifference, light all over it. Poussin's light trees tremble in the wind as the water below offers their reflection to the sky. To the sky its motion, treetops and clouds undulating to indistinguishability, a horizontal streaming breath and brown ink. The mechanics of rhythm extend to feeling. Rhythmoi referred once to the positions the body assumed during a dance, not flow, but pause. And I, existing where feeling is, a line that breathes, climbs through wood, branch, leaf, and blossom, dissolving each, and the eye, the ear. A perceptual style resembles a synapse, his brush, his hand, his hand, his brush. Thank you. There are two lines that I borrow from other writers. To share the transport, oh, with whom but thee is from Wordsworth. And I work to earth my heart is from Denise Riley. Thanks.
Hello, I'd like to first start by thanking Stuart Ross and the Nelson Ball Prize Committee and judges, Rob McLennan of Above Ground Press for giving a home to this work, and also to all the artists and communities from whose work this project necessarily builds. Ode to Mad Villain's Meat Grinder. Begin by becoming born to lob these bombs. Could exuberant light exist orb-like before meaning might readily obscure what might pass? A 7-inch Dobsonian pointed earthward from somewhere beyond. Ode to Earl Sweatshirt's chum. Tough titties spitting cough scandalous could have gone missed often and grew up fast, swinging through stealth. Again, hollow and hollerin', gone off followin', and don't want to be got at where I got off at and fall again. Digits and cartilage, dragging to work, push thoughts to the turf, dirt gone from the lids, coming up off the hurt. Sloughed off, self left lost, tightened the grip and bought, couldn't be. From gagged to God and gotten again, where I'm offering from. Ode to Goody Mob's cell therapy. Who in that couldn't hold, hold me, held down. Who's that? That, just to make it. Who could hold on? Home, just to make it. Who's that? Window. Ode to Danny Brown's Really Dough. Opened up, penned a note to thrown off the crown, pent up, filter, down, on site, no lie. Scheduled, counted out, slandered, moved to touch or take, won't take off, open it up, or earled. Do this. Shoot straight or not at all, motherfucker. Ode to Kanye West's Only One. Can't quiet this query, can't cut to the quick, quite quarter this quandary. Squander this, quarried from stone, won't acquiesce, can't quit, unconquered. Ode to Killer Mike's Willie Burke Sherwood. Reduce it to this. What would you take from this world? Head full of raps, books I read, my first tape. What would there be room for? What richness repeated? Rich, rich, rich. Not the racks and the fame took back. Grandma, if I could fix or exchange. To grow, I'll take that 2, take that 3. More, one more day. My granddaddy could have got to tomorrow. We could be rich, rich, rich. And one last one, Ode to Big Crit's Country Music. Drawl first, that only, no owners, just anthems. Drown in it, thick like syrup with the top down. Screwed up, chop that, swing, swung, or swaggered. One hand on the wheel. Slowed down. Owe everything to this. Thank you.
Beautiful. We have a wall against which the sky is the same, unique.
In Maori here, going to read a little bit from This Radiant Life by Chantal Neuver, which I translated. Crisp October air, the apples, wind fallen, a degree of reality, orientation, wool, the coffee reheated on the hob, ox blood, the barn, a needle of hawthorn, tip, embedded, right calf, gathering branches, dead, wood, still green. Take a few sips, pondering, bone dry, leather hard. Select trees, select boards, length of spruce, weight-bearing timbers, heart to the outside, as ever. Center marked, chalk line, marge de manœuvre, 3 rooms, the study, the oven, the tower, sawdust, the stove, the staircase. The question of doors, of landings squared out, practical, steps angled, 2 or 3, the angle of rise, flight, 17 step heights, main access ascending, incline, a house, a building, so that it is soft.
The eyelids, hemoglobin, I recognize mystery, relation.
Hi there, my name is Matthew James Weigel. Thank you so much for this honor of being shortlisted for the Nelson Ball Prize. I'm going to read a little bit from my chapbook. It was Treaty, It Was Me. In 1876, at Bayonan, Alexander Morris, Commissioner for Treaty Number 6, he said, "I will ask the interpreters to read to you what has been written. And before I go, I will have a copy made to leave with the principal chiefs." Did you know where the river would take you when you first saw it? Watched it bend toward you, wrap you up in school and bridges in a loop. Watched it swim away even as it still holds you. Wait here. This is where we'll meet, at Bayonan. Did you know how much you would resemble an ocean? Gather everything, who you are. Wait and gather stories. Gather, witness, gather, sharing. Touch the pencil, make your mark, negotiate, agree. Did you know that when you wrote this down, the river would remember it? 1876, Treaty Number 6. I wake up at 6 a.m. to a weight on my chest, and I massage it until it says the word treaty. 1876, and my uncle is at Bayonan. He signs the treaty with a leftward slant. It is August, and the aspens bend in the wind. Dreamt that I was in a library again, walking down the stairs into the basement, walking down the stairs into the earth. I see the treaty parchment on a wooden table, and it comes as no surprise that it is the land herself that holds this knowledge. 1921, Treaty Number 11. My lungs are full of spruce trees, but otherwise I am empty. I am here to witness. 1921, and grandfather working for the company in Fort Providence. It is June, and that far north the sun would not set on the British Empire. He signs the treaty with a heavy ink and with his own pen. Dreamt that I was a library again. It is an all or nothing calling. I have language for it. I have bones. But otherwise, I am formless before the 7 a.m. alarm, held loose on bird song, briefly between the low notes, on their way to the water. I am bounded by the geese and punctuated by the dwindling of the caribou. 2020, witness continued. Dreamt I was a river again. A thread of a glacier unwinding itself in slow motion. Just slow enough to dip hands in the water and drink. Thank you so much.
Thanks to all of the shortlisted poets for preparing these clips for tonight. And also congratulations to all of you. By the way, if anyone is looking for any comedic relief, at the very end, if you want to stick around after everything is done, I'm going to play the blooper reel for the citations clip, which is very, very amusing and joyous. So let me tell you about our two judges this year, same as the two judges from last year. James MacDonald, one of the founders of the prize, is the owner of The Printed Word, an astonishing bookstore in Dundas, Ontario. He's also the publisher of Shapes and Sounds Press, which published Nelson's only book of children's poetry, Vole on a Roll, as well as Nelson's chapbook, Walking with Catherine at Lake Erie. Other judge is Beverly Dario. Beverly is a Toronto writer and for years was the publisher and editor of the much missed Mercury Press, which released 3 full-length poetry collections by Nelson, as well as 3 books of essays and journals by Barbara Crusoe. After Mercury, she ran, along with Richard Trular, Text Editions, an essential publisher of experimental Canadian writing. Both James and Beverly were also very close friends of Nelson's. So I'm going to play the citations for you, if I can figure out how to do the share screen again.
Hi, I'm James McDonald, and I'm going to be reading the judges' citations for this year's Nelson Ball Prize. Once again, Bev, Dario, and I acted as judges, reading over 100 submissions and finally deciding on 5 titles. The parameters for the award are clear and capacious. The work must be a Canadian publication featuring poetry of observation. And on that note, I'd like to read a couple of excerpts from an essay that Nelson Ball wrote as an afterword to his selected poetry published by Laurier Press in this wonderful series. And here's my bookmark. That's Nelson. The essay is called Me and My Poetry. I liked haiku as simple nature poems, but I didn't want to restrict the forms of my poems, so I didn't try to write haiku. In truth, I had difficulty identifying and counting syllables. I had a strong desire to write poems of pure description, letting the image reveal itself without any direct statement of idea or emotion. I found it difficult to make this kind of spare expression work. My observations of both the world and of words and language were too generalized, not particular enough. I was looking for some kind of magic, rather than looking at the particularities of words and the world. In my poems, I see meaning in small details of the natural world. To see such details is a way of being human, of appreciating and understanding the world and our place in it. And now I'll read the citations, the 5 books in alphabetical order by author. So first is Outlasting the Weather by Patrick Friesen, published by Anvil. Friesen is known for his bleak hand and for the power of his thought, which tends to an unflinching vision that refuses the separations our distracted consciousness imposes between myth, history, contemporary social realities, spirit, and the quotidian. He explores a myriad of forms and influences, from fado to rhyme to free verse, skewing real, particular places in favor of a metaphysical geography of the human mind. Here, a man licks stones. There, a farm boy spirals within concepts of sorcery, blasphemy, and fornication. In another poem, Looking into a Bathroom Mirror conjures a mysterious encounter with the uncanny looming and lurking behind us, haunting our everyday lives. Yet these are grounded, sharply imagistic poems. Patrick Friesen has said he seeks the words that will say something concerning a disintegrating world I love. In his poetry, Friesen observes and notices, and he does not look away. Not by Julie Justin, published by Bookhug. An obsessive, incantatory sequence of long poems with titles like Silence and Index and Swoon Revolt. Not explores adoration and the line where the real and imagined touch. These poems seek a perceptual style in which all the senses are alert, in which the body and metaphysical reality mingle without hierarchy. And the question of clarity? With my eyes open, I hadn't noticed how quickly my heart was beating. Justin's intense, delirious maximalism swerves between the casual, the ineffable, and the intimate. The desire to touch thought the knot of being, is like writing a love letter, invoking a yearning for the same sky Icarus sought, while mindful of the perfectly observational, as in these lines: quiet amid your blue voice that summons us a single wave. The Odes, Incomplete, by Zane Koss, published by Above Ground Press. Each of these odes is preceded by a grid made of a single letter repeating. Its symmetry just hinting at rhythm, but the predominant effect is stasis. The empty grid is both striking and boring, and there is something decidedly urban about it, suburban. These letter grids are followed by the odes that Koss has inscribed on them. The abstract landscape becomes the scene of the human voice, the pathos and pulse of a life, playful, painful, personal. As the titles indicate, each ode pays tribute to a particular recording of a rap song. In the afterword, Koss explains his process, how the letters that constitute each grid were arrived through repeated listenings. The care and attention that has gone into these poems likewise reward repeated readings, especially aloud. This Radiant Life by Chantal Neveu, translated by Aaron Moore, published by Bookhug. This book-length poem launches us into a space of cleared utterance, a speech free from rhetoric and ideology that invites us into the primal connections and attractions and movements of being. A poetry of statement and slow wonder that, by not drawing attention to itself, turns our attention outward. Is it a region? The space that is opened by the text, by words as such, is revelatory. We are the others, mediums, clearing. But this poetry of the outside, of the utmost, as well as the quotidian, also speaks of what is inmost. Our hearts take form before our hemispheres. So it is with our connection. This is perhaps the most incredible dimension of this poem, the way it celebrates the human, tearing down our polarities and reminding us of our connection to each other and the earth and the sky. And finally, it was treaty, it was me, processes of agreement, acquisition, archive, with figures and their captions by the author, by Matthew James Weigel, published by Vallum Chapbook Series. This work looks hard at the treaty-making process in Canada, specifically the numbered treaties from 1870 to 1921, which bear signatures of the author's ancestors. Weigel looks at the signed documents, observing the leftward slant of his uncle's signature on Treaty Number 6, seeing the aspens bend in the wind that August day. The official documents of the past are presented alongside poems of dream and imagination, ways of knowing that carry no legal force. When Weigel mirrors the Crown's methods, the imbalance of power is poignantly evoked. A processed photograph of the throne at Windsor Castle bears the note, "I have acquired and used this photograph without permission. It has been digitally altered to suit my needs." With a minimum of commentary, Weigel undermines the terms of official history, often with painful irony. I wake up at 6 a.m. to a weight on my chest. I massage it until it says the word treaty. Archives contain the evidence, but the body and the earth hold the memories. And the winning publication for this year's Nelson Ball Prize is going to two people, Chantal Neveu and Erin Moore, for her translation of This Radiant Life, published by Bookhug. Congratulations, Chantal and Erin.
Thank you so much, James, and thank you so much, Beverly. And congratulations to Chantal and Aaron. And congratulations again to all the shortlisted poets. The winning poet and translator will be splitting the $1,000 purse, again, made possible by very generous and wonderful donors. And all of the shortlisted poets will receive 2 books by Nelson Ball. So if you have some of Nelson's books, send me an email so I don't send you ones that you already have. I can send you a list of what's available. So we are going to chat with the 2 winners now. And if anyone has any questions, please put them into the chat. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna do this thing here. Let's see if this all works out. Okay, here's Aaron. Looking for, where's Chantal? Oh, there you are. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, now, are you able to unmute yourself, Chantal?
Yes, hello.
Okay.
Bravo.
It's so great to see you again, Aaron, and it's so great to meet you, Chantal. I'm just looking for your book here. Again, this is the book, and I encourage everybody to order this book and to order all of the books that were on the short list this year, because they're all, in their own unique ways, amazing poetry experiences.
Thank you.
So, I think I'll just ask a few questions again, just a few questions briefly. And again, if anyone has anything they would like to ask of the poet and the translator of this radiant life, please just type it into the chat. I wanted to ask you first, we caught a little bit of it in that clip that you prepared, but we sort of look at this book and it's so carefully, the poetry is so carefully placed on the field of the page. And so I wanted to ask you to address that idea of what importance the field of the page has, the way the words sit on it, or however you want to discuss that. Because that seems very key to this work to me.
I can say, well, first, thank you very, very much. I'm so honored and very grateful. Thank you to Erin and everyone, Book Hug. I can say many, many thank you, and to all the team of Nelson Ball committee. I'm so honored, very moved. Thank you, Stuart and Catherine and James, Beverly, everyone. The page, the words in the page is, it's a kind of evidence of the rhythmic and the focus on the word, each word, les mots mêmes, words such, and also the space between words as the respiration, inspiration and expiration. So the space between the word is the radiant space. So that's why to make a different rhythmic of it in the page, it was very important in this long poem to have the sensation of the word, the radiance and the polysemic attention to the word, and for the reader to feel it, to have the time, also the slowness or the speed of a turning page. But so it's a kind of the freedom of each reader for each word or each syntagma or so. But Erin can talk also about this sensation of the page, right? Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to ask Erin if this, what kind of experience this was for you in translating because of that aspect of the book.
Well, it's because the
the space of the page, because I feel Chantal writes the white space on the page as well as she doesn't just write the words. She writes a whole spatialization of words to allow that, as she was saying, that attention to one word at a time sometimes, and sometimes to a suite of small phrases. And it affects the way you hold the book and the way you turn the pages and absorb things. In a way, it's funny, like you would think you would just read really fast past the places where there's just one word on a page, but in fact, it slows you down, curiously, because you have to absorb the reverberation of that word. And that word reverberates with a word that's on the other side of its own page, and then as well as sometimes the page across from it. So when I was translating, I had to pay attention to those rhythmic and resonant values in order that because there's numerous words quite often that you could pick to translate any one word that more or less cover its register, because there's no equivalencies between languages really, but that to create that sensation with the words, where the words enchain themselves the way as closely as they do, as I could make it to the way they do in French. And so that you still have the space to, each word still resonates. It doesn't lose any of its power when it's alone on the page. So it was a complicated task, in fact, but very wonderful to be absorbed in.
Okay, thank you very much. Charlie Huskin, a great cultural force in the Toronto literary and art world, asked a question here. Chantal, were you influenced by conceptual artists who use text at all? Conceptual artists use
yes, of course. I have a lot of attraction by conceptual art. I don't consider myself as a wish to be conceptual. It's not a motivation, but of course I have some problems and constraints, and so I choose a lot of key indication for me. So in a way, I work with concept, but I'm not strict with it. It's a guide. It's a guideline. So that helps me to take decision, of course, and to explore perimeters of consideration that can be my obsession or interrogation. Or so. So I'm not a strict conceptual actor, but of course I respect that. But the sensation or the emotion is stronger than the concept, if I can say. But I respect very much my constraints. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Great response. And I just wanted to ask briefly, because I'm very interested, especially in translation these days. I'm doing some translation work myself. And so I wanted to ask Erin just briefly, what is the difference for you between writing your own poetry and writing translation?
Well, it's for me, first of all, it's part of the same practice. It doesn't really matter to me if I'm writing my own poetry or if I'm translating somebody's. But obviously, when I'm translating somebody else's poetry, it's a way of, I think, just to go back for a second, like when I'm doing my own poetry, I don't feel I'm doing something that makes me stand out among a bunch of other people. I'm hearing other people, I'm listening to other people as I'm writing, and I'm just writing my small corner of a big map, you know? And so it's kind of like when I'm translating somebody, I'm somewhere else on that big map, and I meet somebody usually through their poetry, and I want to bring that poetry over to where I am, where my little house is on the map. And I want to bring them that poetry as a friend,
to introduce it to the other people working near me. So I have to be, and because I can speak the language, I understand it, even though, I might not be the same culture, and so I miss things. I just want to bring this. I feel like this poetry is doing something amazing, and I want to bring it so that it can be in my community and do its amazing thing for the people who can only read it in an English translation. So that's my motivation for translating. And when I'm in it, I just love working with the language and just seeing if I can create that, recreate the work so that it can have a similar kind of resonance for a reader in English as it has for me reading it in French or another language.
Yeah, similar kind of resonance. Great, thank you. And Chantal, so what is it? How does it feel to be translated? What is that experience?
Oh, I enjoy very much. It's for me, it's the definition of the experiment of poetry, because it's polysemic. So it's an interpretation. It's another reverberation. It's another resonance. So it's learning more. It's to interpret another meaning, another sensation, and also in this. With this book, with Erin Murray, because I was also in the experiment of adjacence between words, between page, between syntagm, adjacence. Is it a word in English?
Adjacency. The state of being adjacent. Yeah.
So French and English, it's another adjacency. Right? It's another bit together besides. So it's another interval, it's another space between. So it was kind of exponential. So for every translation, it's exponential. But with this book, it was very interesting because it was the purpose, it was the object also, it was a motivation. So it's very dynamic. It's another apparition. It's another, and also émerveillement. It's kind of wonderful to see what is the new radiation in that case. So I enjoy. It's a privilege, really, for me. It's great. It's language also, as Ivan said. It's to be very close of each words and all the words together, and it's a fabric. Yeah, it's very rich.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just going to ask one last question of Chantal, and if anyone else has anything, type it into chat. Otherwise, we'll wrap up shortly. But this prize, the Nelson Ball Prize, I understood that you've been exploring some of Nelson's work, and that's really exciting. This is one of the things we want to do is encourage people to read Nelson as well, and then seeing other poets' approaches to this concept of observation. So I wanted to ask you about observation, and if observation is something that is key in your work or poetry in general, in your view. Yeah. Yeah, observation, of course. And also, as Erin said, to hear, to listen. So observation and includes to listen to the. So I make a lot of note what I do here also, not only what I see or what I think of what I'm seeing, but it's a lot of listening. It's a lot of listening can be also when I'm reading. So it's a lot of metabolization of all the senses, all the. Of course, observation is it's very important in that kind of large meaning, because I consider the action of writing a lot of literality. So because when you take literally a thing,
or a word. It's 1:1. The scale is 1:1, if I can say, but it's another exponential something, a reverberation. You just move the word from here to there, and it's another word. So so the observation, very simply, or the clarity, like Nelson Ball enjoyed, and the velocity, or the no hierarchy, or very simple. But this simplicity is very sophisticated, right? It's so with the action of observation, which is minimalist, it's very active finally. So writing is very simple, but it's also very multidimensional, I think.
Yeah.
So the reader read it, and also another meaning. So yeah, it's another observation.
But what really did strike me, again, looking at a book where there is so much blank field, and the blankness has such meaning, that you would think that there is a simplicity here, but there's an incredible complexity, in fact, with these isolated words, isolated phrases, positioning the poems. That was great. We do have one more question here from Kim Fullerton, who is so important to the visual arts world. Thanks for being here. Chantal, what brought you to the decision to have your book translated into another language, in English in particular?
Why the decision? Is it the question?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, well, my community is many great poets, polyglot, multilinguistic. So for me, the sharing, and they are very francophile. They speak French much better than I speak English. And so for me, it's my community. So it's my reality to share the language with them. And it's very, very important for me, very rich. So it's kind of an evidence to be in this sharing, and the privilege to share very closely with Erin. It was a gift to when she accepted to translate the book, and so it's the decision, or the reason for me, just my daily life. I mean, to share to read in English, my friends and people, and it's I don't know how to say so more simply. Yeah.
No, thank you so much. Yeah. That was great. And I just want to mention that Charlie Huskin posted something very interesting here. He said, we should maybe call it maximalist rather than minimalist. Each word counts for so much.
Right.
It's great.
Like Nelson Ball, because the condensary, condensé, the condensation of
it's condensed.
Yeah, and one of Nelson's favorite poets, oh my gosh, Mark Truscott, you'll help me on this, the American minimalist poet.
Niedecker?
Cummings? No.
Lorraine Niedecker, who has that poem
Yeah.
about going to, I don't remember it exactly, but look it up. It's a great poem about going off to write poetry, and she says that she's going to the condensery to work. It's beautiful. And Charlie mentions Larry Eigner as another poet who would fall that category. I want to thank you both so much for this amazing conversation, for your patience, for taking the time, giving of your time.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you very much. Very much.
To James and to Bev, and just really, it's a really incredible prize. It's a really, and it brought together an amazing group of poets on the short list as well. It was so great to be able to see them read. It was really a real highlight to hear them recreate with their voices that some of their work. It's I feel very lucky to be Chantal's translator for this book. I'm hoping she will trust me again. And it's a wonderful thing to share this prize with Chantal.
Thank you so much again. And it's been such a privilege talking to you both. And I hope I get to meet you in person sometime, Chantal, and I hope I get to see you, Arian, sometime. Who knows when. I'm going to, let's see if I can send you back to your seats now. And I think I can bring Catherine Stevenson up onto the screen now. If Catherine, where is Catherine? Oh, there she is.
I am. So thank you all for your patience and for the richness of this evening. It has truly been a privilege for me to be part of this. Thank you to Stuart, who always hears us so meaningfully. Thank you so much. So thank you also to all the publishers who submitted publications for consideration for this year's prize. Please visit Nelson Ball Prize, all one word, .blogspot.com for information in the new year about submitting works for consideration for next year's Nelson Ball Prize. We encourage everyone to explore not only Chantal and Aaron's winning book, but all the books on the shortlist. Yeah. I'm sure that that's something you're all wanting to do after those marvelous readings. Thank you to Lori Siblock and Kaya Sirala for their technical assistance this evening. And thank you once more to all the wonderful donors for your great generosity. If anyone else would like to help support this legacy project in the future, please write Nelson Ball Prize, all one word, all lowercase, at gmail.com. And we hope that you all have a good night. Stay safe and be well. But before you go, you're welcome to stick around and watch the blooper reel from James' remarks. And I hear that it's well worth watching.
Very entertaining. Thanks, Catherine. Such a pleasure to present with you again. And thank you all again for all being here. And I'm going to try and share screen one more time here, see how it works.
Hello, I'm James McDonald, and I'm going to be reading. Am I smiling? Is it like...
It's nice.
It's nice? Doesn't it look like I'm privately laughing? Like, I don't... Okay. Okay. So you can just cut this part and then start from when I start, right?
Obviously.
All right. You rolling?
I'm rolling.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. It's gonna be awkward, but like...
Hello, I'm James McDonald, and I'm going to be reading the judge... It's like, I'm like, okay.
Okay.
Ready and rolling.
We gotta stop.
The truck.
It was just really loud.
Okay. Hello, I'm James McDonald, and I'm
You're
going
gonna
to be...
start that again.
Why?
Because I talked over you.
Okay. Better than last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. like, of course. Okay.
I mean, last year you were just a bit wooden.
It was a bit awful.
It wasn't that awful.
Should we just start over?
Is it helpful for you?
No, we just gotta get it. We just keep going.
Do you want to look at me or do you want to look
I can't see. I'm not wearing my glasses. I can't see anything. So it's better just to have them off and then go.
Okay, good. Whenever you're ready.
I'll start higher up. I liked haiku as simple nature poems, deciding upon 5 titles. I'll start again. Starting again. Published in Canada. Let me start over. Hi, I'm James McDonald, and I'm going to be reading the judge's citation for this year's... I didn't pluralize it again. What the fuck? Okay. Now I'm going to be reading the judge's citations for this... Okay, starting over. Get the plural down. Jesus, why is it so hard to speak?
You're doing great.
Gotta, like...
Loosen up.
Make it alive. Okay, let's do it again.
I don't know.
I'm not wooden, but I'm fucking up. Okay.
You're not fucking up that much.
And fuck-ups are fine. Yeah.
Fuck-ups are also fine.
I completely agree with Jean-Luc Godard that a film, that editing, it's all edits. That makes the film.
Hey, do you want a note?
Yeah. Oh, I totally want every note.
Okay,
Yeah.
so my one note is like, would you ever say capacious?
Oh, you don't like capacious. And roomy? I'm gonna say capacious.
Okay.
It's a word I've used. Come on.
It's fine.
All right. Good. I mean, thank you. Going.
Whenever you're ready. Okay, do it again. Yeah.
Okay. And can we splice? Did I say published by Book Hug when I read that?
Yeah, you did. In the exact same way, actually.
Published by Book
Book
Hug.
Hug.
Right now.
Right here, right now.
Oops, forgot to lock the door. Hi. No, we're closed. Okay.
Yep.
Are we gonna do and the winner is? So now I announce the winner?
I don't know.
I guess so.
Did you announce the winner? Or
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Do I? Maybe I don't.
I don't know.
And the winner is.
Okay, wait.
Published by Book Hug.
No.
This book blew my mind. Thank you. Should I say that? Is that fine?